And welcome back to the show. The people who work the hardest throughout the pandemic and are the backbones of our economy sometimes are the most vulnerable to financial hardship as well as insecurity. Now, this past year has made the economic inequality and vulnerability abundantly clear that a shifting needs to be thought of in designing a system that works for everyone. In April of 2019, social worker and co-founder of Basic Income NYC, Diane Pagen, and 2020 candidate for U.S. Congress James Felton, they also came together with the goal of organizing a public event in the show of force and inclusion for basic income. Joining us now to share a little bit more is the co-founder of Basic Income March, Diane Pagen. And Diane, good to have you.
Hi, Daren. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. And, I guess when we talk about the work that you're doing, it's really about economic equality for everyone. And so when did you start to really get involved in this whole thing about economic equality?
Well, economic equality in general, I got interested in it probably as a much younger person in my 20s. I was always interested in helping people, and I did a lot of volunteer work and such. And I got interested in it in earnest when I went to social work school at Fordham University in New York. And during my time there, I was introduced to the idea of a universal basic income by someone who had worked on it for many decades. And I just, thinking about what it was like as a social worker, meeting people who really their core problem was they didn't have enough money, but all that existed for them was non-cash services that they, sometimes they didn't even need. I got more and more interested in universal basic income. So I guess I've been interested in figuring out how to meet everybody's needs in a dignified way for a couple of decades.
Yeah. And so now as we look at the work that you're doing, you're really trying to raise awareness when it comes to the issue of basic income. And for you, what does that look like to be able to just have basic income?
A basic income is it's an agreed upon amount of money that a society decides would be adequate to meet basic survival needs, and it's distributed with no conditions. So that's the key concept, is that there are no conditions to get the basic income, is how generally most of us who are pro basic income think about it. So it would be unconditional, adequate to meet a certain degree of basic human needs. So no one's life and health is endangered due to having no money. And it goes to everyone in a given society or a given district or a given city or a given nation, depending on how you're designing it.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, when it comes to policies, there's some policies that really get up under your skin. So share with me about some of the policies and the initiatives that you really are fighting for right now.
Well, so I'm working with an organization called Income Movement, and Income Movement is a national organization, and we're very, very hopeful about some of the federal policy improvements that have gone on. In COVID, there's been substantial veil has been pulled off of our national programs, similar to what happened actually during the Great Depression, when charitable organizations insisted in the 1920s that that if only they got the money from the federal government, that they could provide for the basic human needs of the people during times of economic strife. And of course, they lost that argument. And because we were able to prove that they couldn't do it, and that cash transfers were necessary, we got the Social Security Act. So we're really hopeful now, fast forward about, I guess, 90 years or so, we're very, very hopeful because basic income has had a real resurgence, and it started before COVID, several years before COVID-19. But COVID-19 and the shutdown and people losing their jobs and having to stay home and all of that, it really highlighted and pulled the veil off the idea that we have a functioning, adequate safety net. And it has become painfully obvious that we have no functioning national safety net. And while from state to state, some states do a little bit better than others, there is no state that distributes an adequate cash supplement to all of its people, and we have poverty in every state. So we're very, very hopeful about some of the things that have come out this year, in part because of income movements advocacy and growing these conversations, developing these conversations with federal legislators. There is now legislation that has been introduced by Representative Omar called the Support Act. It's been co-sponsored by Jamal Bowman, and she is all on board for a basic income that would have a quantity going to adults and a quantity going to children. We also just had the victory of the expanded child tax credit, which has, the data coming in is saying that we are making a significant shift in reducing poverty in families with children. So we're continuing to do that work because just because we've had a few victories doesn't mean that we can relax.
No, and I know that you got a few victories and you want a few more. And with that, you've got a march that's also planned as well, trying to drum up support, raise the banner of awareness for people. Talk to us about the march.
Sure. So the Basic Income March, this is the third annual Basic Income March. The first one was in 2019, as I said, and we also had a scaled down version of the march last year, where we didn't move around so much and we were in Manhattan. We actually had two two city council candidates came who are in support of a universal basic income. One of them was Althea Stevens, who has now won her seat in the city council, and she is pro basic income. We had lots of representation from the community leaders who are not just politicians or not just seeking to win political office, but they have a track record of working in their communities to feed people and make sure people have what they need. So in 2021, we're going to march up Amsterdam Avenue on September 25th. The start point is West 123rd Street and Amsterdam Avenue. We're gonna get together there and get powered up, and then we're gonna march up Amsterdam Avenue to 143rd. 143rd and Amsterdam has a plaza there. It's a carless pedestrian plaza called Johnny Hartman Plaza. And we're going to set up there and have a rally. We'll have some music. We're going to have a youth marching band called the Marching Cobras, who are based in Harlem. And we'll have speakers. We're going to have activities, and we're going to have a lot of community groups give out information about what they're working on too, as we collaborate with a lot of community orgs.
Yeah. And I know that, this march is not just a march, it's a march with an intention. And part of that intention is really to bring this awareness, but not only to bring awareness in this area, but also to look at who's being affected, those people who, because this really plays in two areas. It talks about poverty, education, and just the quality of life. Give us a little bit about the effect of basic income and what it has when it comes to poverty, education, and basic life.
Sure. So there's been at this point there's numerous pilots, basic income pilots with taking small samples of people and distributing an unconditional amount of money to them for a period of time. For example, Stockton, California. For example, Ontario, Canada. Although that one is, that's a longer story, but the bottom line of it is that everywhere a pilot has been done, and there's plenty of, you can definitely get, plenty of information as to where pilots have been conducted. Everywhere that it happens, the data that comes back records that people are less stressed, people are reporting less stress, better parenting, better school attendance. And even though a lot of the talking heads that oppose a basic income often will raise the question, oh, well, no one will work, you have to understand we need for people to start challenging that assumption, because basically what happens is in every pilot, the paid work increases. People find better work. So sometimes parents drop temporarily out of a job that isn't satisfying or it's not making sense for their family, but they regroup, they get more education, they get what they need to be successful in interviews, and they go back out and they get better employment. And this is across the board in virtually every pilot, all the data that we get back. And because of the increasing popularity of the concept, there are now, I think, around 20 plus pilots in the planning stages all across the United States, one of which is in Hudson, New York, another which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's another one in Newark, New Jersey with Mayor Baraka. So there's plenty of data now that shows that when you distribute small, adequate amounts of income to people without creating onerous bureaucracy, that individuals are the best agents of how to use money, not large conglomerates, and that it's really the best way to solve problems. So, that's to your point about education and poverty and such. It's really the most efficient way to solve a person's economic problem is to give them money. And when I say give, I'm not saying give as in a gift. I'm saying give them the resources that they are owed, basically, because they produce.
You can't say it any better than that. I mean, I think when you really talk about it, we have to really do better in terms of making sure that people have the basic needs in life, and giving people a basic income in America shouldn't be so hard. Diane, I want to thank you for your time with us here on the show today, and certainly it's been great to have you. Before we go, real quickly, let's talk about how people can get connected to you.
So we would like anyone that's interested in coming to the march, you can go to basicincomemarch.com and you click on the link that says join an event. And you look for the New York City March, because there's more than one march. There are marches in other cities as well. And you can RSVP. And once you RSVP, you'll start getting a weekly email from us with information that you can use. The march, it's free to participate. And like I said, we're meeting at, I don't think I said the meeting time. We're meeting at 12:30 on Saturday, September 25th at West 123rd in Amsterdam. And if people want to, really, social media is wonderful. We're on social media at income_movement. And social media is great, but it's not a substitute for feet on the ground. So come march with us and let's show them that we know the deal and we
Well,
know that we're going to make it happen.
that's right. Well, Diane, thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums, enjoying the conversation and really bringing some enlightenment to our viewers about the Basic Income and Basic Income March. Diane Pagen, our guest here, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you at the march.